Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show that covers all things marketing. The GSMC Marketing News Podcast gives you the latest marketing news, from what major businesses have planned for the coming year to the newest trends in advertising, from podcasts, digital and streaming, to the old standbys of radio, television, and billboards. Whether you're a marketing agent or a business trying to expand your brand, you've come to the right place. The GSMC Marketing News Podcast starts now.
Hello, and welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie, and guys, I am filled with energy today. I don't know how many of you are valued, consistent listeners. First of all, you're all valued. I shouldn't say that, but how many of you are consistent listeners? But the last podcast episode we did was about coffee, which is my favorite thing in the entire world. I was so jazzed to record it. And for those of you that don't know, maybe you just don't think of like how this type of thing works, but I actually spend one dedicated day recording all the podcasts for the week. I have a job that I work 9 to 5 during the week. So for me, this podcast is so incredibly important that I want to make sure I'm staying on top of it and that I am delivering high quality content for you, the listener. So in order to do that, I dedicate one day a week to just recording all the episodes. I don't do anything else on that day. I'm wearing my pajamas. My hair isn't done. There's no makeup because it's a podcast. I wake up, I record, and then I go to bed. So basically, I mean, there's eating in there. I'm not going to lie to you. I stop for food every now and then. But basically, I just recorded the coffee podcast and I loved it. I was so jazzed about it. And something that I mentioned in that podcast episode for one of our strategies, if you didn't listen, go listen to it. It's great. But one of our strategies was really taking advantage of content marketing. And I realized, although we have done podcasts on how to specifically create specific areas of content marketing, such as video and photography and like blogs and all that, I don't think I've ever done one dedicated podcast to where we talk about content marketing and what content marketing means and how much it can just freaking help your company and help your marketing. So I'm all jazzed up again. I'm coming off of the jazz from the coffee podcast and sliding right into this content marketing podcast because that is what we are talking about on today's episode. But first, we must take a moment because this is no ordinary episode of the GSMC Marketing Podcast. This is our, drum roll please. Oh my gosh, that was so dumb. I was just slapping my kitchen island. I'm sorry, that was so silly. Okay, this is the 70th episode of the GSMC Marketing Podcast. That's right. We have done 70 of these bad boys. I feel like every episode we do, though, it just gets a little bit better. I listened to my podcast audition the other night because I was going through my hard drive, trying to clear some stuff up, and I listened to it. And the one I auditioned with was an episode we ended up airing, which was talking about seasonal marketing. And I could see myself. I recorded it in my washroom, as silly as that sounds. And it was like this huge pressure to do good and to be amazing. And I listened to it and I was like, this is nowhere near what the podcast is at right now. We are creating content for you, the listener. We are creating valuable and engaging content for you. At the beginning, it was all about just reading stuff I'd written down and researched and just getting the information out to you. But now it is so much more collaborative. I really want it to be a place, a community, a family that you can go to, you can turn to and get ideas from and engage with. And I think that is what we are doing now. But the best way for us all to engage together, to be one big happy family, and to do 70 more episodes together is for you to do me a favor and subscribe. Subscribe, rate, review, go onto social media and connect with us, because as soon as we connect, as soon as we start connecting, that's when this podcast gets to go to another level. And already people have told me they don't like when I do stats and facts segments, and they don't always like the news unless the news is about anything other than the coronavirus. But right now that is what all the news is about. So I'm skipping it for now until we get some news stories you guys actually want to hear. So I want this to be something you want to listen to and something you enjoy listening to, and most of all, something you benefit from. But the only way I can know if I'm headed in the right direction is if you subscribe and if you let me know. So please do all those things because, one, it just helps me out a whole heck of a lot knowing, and it brings me comfort at night. But two, it's going to make this podcast better for everyone involved. So now, enough talking about the podcast and how this is our 70th episode, which I am so excited about, which is why we are doing such a big theme today of content marketing, that we're just going to jump right in, guys, with our first segment, which is how to start content marketing. So content marketing, just to review for those of you that don't know, content marketing is when you're not just selling your product. Your marketing campaigns aren't just you talking about the product, the price, and where they can buy it. That's not content. That's just sales. Content marketing is when you post something on Instagram that has to do with your brand. Do not get me wrong. This content marketing has everything to do with your brand. Don't get that confused. But it is something that they can engage with other than just buying your product. It is that second level of, yeah, you may buy our coffee, you might buy our wine, you may buy our beer, but also you enter our giveaways. You're a part of our rewards program. You watch our videos, you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you're a follower on Instagram, you comment on every post. It's basically what I asked you guys to do at the start of this podcast. It's how you get people to subscribe. It's how you get people to engage with you by creating content for them. So we're going to talk about, first of all here, I have 7 different steps, actually way better than ways, of how you can get started with your content marketing. Number 1, you got to gather your data. So I talk endlessly about data. Y'all are probably sick of hearing me talk about data, but let me tell you something. Data is so important when it comes to content marketing. You need to know who's interacting with your content, who's following you, who is your audience, what do they like, what don't they like, what do they like that I post, what don't they like that I post, what kind of videos do they seem to interact with more, what kind of videos do they not seem to interact more. So the first step here is to gather all that data. And if you don't have that data, but you have social media, that data is on every social media platform for free. Go listen to our data podcast. I talk about how you can find it and how you can use it. So step 1, gather your data. Now step 2 is the fun part. I have a friend, her name's Whitney, and she is the best person at brainstorming. She is amazing at it, and I've gotten the opportunity to work with her on so many projects, and let me tell you, I think I have figured out why she is so good at it, and it's because the sky's the limit with her. You could dream up any dream, and she could dream it up 20 times bigger. So what I want you to do for step number 2 is to be Whitney, be your own Whitney, and brainstorm your craziest and your wildest dreams for your content. If you want to do $1 million movie starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, write it down. I'm not saying that you writing it down is going to make it happen, but it's going to get that ball rolling. You're going to write down that you want to do a movie with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson where he only drinks your coffee and that's the entire movie. It's an hour long. Great. Write it down. Then you're going to be like, all right, but what if we did a commercial with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson? Write that down. Okay, what if we did a social media campaign with a local influencer who looks like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson? Boom, write that down. So start with your craziest ideas and then just go from there. With brainstorming, the sky is the limit. And here's my only suggestion, because I don't want to put rules around this. It's very important for there not to be rules around this. Set yourself, though, up for 1 hour of brainstorming. And then once that timer goes, chefs, put your knives down, you're done. You step away from it. You go get some coffee. You listen to the GSMC podcast network, any of the podcasts we have, take a break. And then you're going to come back and you are going to circle all the ideas that are realistic, within your budget, within your time zone, and are achievable. So obviously you're going to look at that and you're going to be like, hey, the 1 hour movie with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson where he drinks our coffee, not achievable. But the social media campaign with the local influencer who looks like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, very achievable. Circle that one. So it's just a way to organize your brainstorming and to take a look at it from a more critical perspective. Now, step number 3 is mood boards. So once you have circled all your ideas, you have the ones you are going to go forward with. Create mood boards for those ideas. Now, some of you might not know what a mood board is, and I did do a whole podcast on different sites you can use and different programs that will help you create mood boards. Go listen to that. But a mood board is basically how your idea is going to look and feel. It's a visual representation of that. So it's basically, you've seen people make vision boards. Get out a big piece of cardboard, cut out photos from magazines, print them out, and paste it all over the piece of cardboard until you get the general vibe and feeling you're looking for in that project. And you need to do a mood board for every single piece of content marketing you make. So if you don't want to have a bunch of cardboard lying around, there are programs that can help you do it digitally. Number 4 and 5. First, you need to do an equipment check, and then you need to do a resources check. So the equipment check will basically be, all right, so we said we wanted to do a social media campaign with the influencer that looks like The Rock, and we're going to need a DSLR camera to take the photos, and we're going to need someone to take the photo. So you're checking to make sure you have the equipment, and then you're checking to see if you have the resources. And here's the thing. I need you to understand that you might not have all the resources that you want. You might not be able to find an influencer in your area who looks like The Rock. But what you can do is create 2 lists, one for resources and one for equipment, make it a wish list, and then say, all right, I don't have a DSLR camera, but I do have an iPhone. Check. I don't have an influencer who looks like The Rock, but I do have these girls in my community who are always seen drinking coffee, and they have hundreds of thousands of followers. Check. So you're creating the list so that you can better obtain your resources and understand what you need and how you are going to get it. Step number 6 is to create the game plan. So you got your list of resources, you got your list of equipment, you have your mood boards, and you are ready to go. You are ready to start creating. This is your game plan. You are going to first create a timeline. So on Monday, I'm going to ask the influencers if they want to be a part of it. By Wednesday, they're going to get contracts, and by Friday, we're shooting it. So you're creating the timeline, you have your resources, you know how you're going to get your resources, and you have it all planned out. You have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. If you don't know how to make a game plan, that was a bit of a crash course. There's not much more to it than that, but I do get very, very detailed in a different podcast that you can also go listen to and check out. It is about marketing strategies, and we talk about game plans in there. So finally, step number 7 is you are actually going to stick to your game plan. Guys, I'll be honest, this is something I struggle with. I will come up with these amazing, incredible ideas that are totally doable, and then I'll do it on a Friday. I'll sleep it off on the weekend, and then come Monday morning, all of my enthusiasm is gone. Do not let that happen to you. Do not be like me. Stick to your game plan because you are going to get this done. It is going to look great, and I can't wait to see it. Okay, everyone, we are going to go ahead and take a break from the podcast, but when we come back, we are moving on to segment 2, which is ideas for your content marketing. So I have a couple very generic ideas that are specific enough to get your brainstorming in motion, but not so specific that you're like, hey, that won't work for me. I sell soap. That only works for people who sell coffee. That's not what we do here. I want to give everyone ideas that work for every business. So stay tuned for more of the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and I'll be right back.
Golden State Media Concepts Technology Podcast covers everything tech. The hottest mobile phones, tablets, games. We review it, rate it, test it. Whether you're Microsoft or Apple, Android or iPhone, we'll give it to you black and white. The Golden State Media Concepts Technology Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie, and on today's episode of the podcast, we are talking about content marketing. So this is a type of marketing that allows you to be a little bit more creative, although let's be honest, marketing itself is an extremely creative industry. And so everything we create really is creative. And to put it very simply, everything we create is creative, but content marketing is creative in the way that it is supposed to be engaging for people who didn't create it. Because sometimes we can really, really love this tweet that we are sending out about our product because we care so much about our product, and then nobody retweets it because nobody cares as much about our product as we do. That doesn't mean people aren't going to look at it. That doesn't mean you shouldn't send out tweets like that. But what this is sending out tweets saying, hey everyone, we just filmed this video of our product. What do you think? And then people write back, I love it. I love it. You're going to get a few people saying they hate it, but don't worry about them. They're still retweeting it, right? So you got to win some to lose some with those. But anyways, what we are talking about on this podcast, we already went through how you can start. Now I want to give you some ideas of what you can create. Types of content marketing that is going to boost your marketing, boost your social media, boost your website, boost your product sales because you're using these ideas. Now, I want to be clear. These ideas I'm going to give you aren't generic. I don't want to say generic, but I want to be clear. They can work for you if you make decorative throw pillows or if you make office chairs. Can you tell that I'm recording this in my living room? I feel like sometimes I'm just like looking at the props I have around my house and I'm like, yes, my driver's license. Let's talk about that in marketing. No. It's not totally that, but it's the coronavirus. I have to record this in my house. So my examples might be limited to my living room studio. But anyways, so I have a couple ideas here for you. We're going to explain each one and hopefully you'll leave this podcast getting your brainstorming session going a little bit and have some ideas of what you can create. So number one is a DIY infographic. So if you make coffee, I love using coffee as an example. It is one of the most easiest ones to use. If you ever need to explain anything in marketing to anyone, use coffee as an example because everyone understands it. So a DIY infographic for coffee would be, all right, at the top, here's where we grow our beans. At the bottom, here is how we grind our beans. Here is the amount of water we put in to make a cup of coffee, and here's where you can buy it. So here's the thing, guys. That's just a freaking ad. That is just telling people how you make it and then where they can buy it. But since it's an infographic, since you're shelling out a little bit of money to get a graphic designer in here, or you're using some sort of program to create it, people are going to interact with it. We did a whole episode on the Instagram algorithm. But for those of you that don't know, the algorithm, the purpose of it on Instagram is it will benefit you if you're able to create content that allows people to stay on Instagram for longer. And an infographic is perfect for that because people have to read it. They have to interact with it. They're going to look at it. They're going to zoom in and look at your little graphics that you have. They want to interact with it. It is fun. It's fun for them. So that's one way to beat it. Another way is it totally shows off your brand. An infographic can look so cool, so engaging, and it can represent your brand by having brand colors and designs and fonts. So an infographic will, one, give the information of where they can buy it, how your coffee is made, how your product is made. And two, it's going to look great on your feed. It's going to look great on Facebook. It's going to look good on Twitter. It's going to look good on your website. You can even print it off and like frame it in your office because it's going to look so cool that everyone's going to want to look at it. So number 2, a history of blog. So here's the thing, guys. If you're doing a blog with a B, not a V, B as in Barry. If you're doing a blog, then please, for the love of Barry, include photos and infographics. Do not just write pages upon pages of text. Why? They're not going to read it, especially if it's a history of. But if you write a history of your company, of your product, of your industry, of you as a business owner, or you as a person in marketing, people are going to want to read that if you include interactive content within it. Throw in that infographic we created before. Let's reuse some content here. Make a video, put some photos on it, break out the text, have headers, have headlines, use different colors of font within it. Make it interactive. But this is also going to be one of your biggest and most valuable pieces of content marketing. Because again, the algorithm benefits you if you're letting people stay on a site longer. And that's not just true for Instagram. That's true for every site. And your audience wants quality content. They want the ability to read the blog and learn something from it. They don't want to just read it for fluff. So make sure you're putting in time, research, effort, and energy into creating a blog that people actually will benefit from reading. Number 3, a day in the life vlog. V as in Victor, guys. So you just did your blog. Now here's the thing. So many people think blogging and vlogging are the same thing, but one's on video. Wrong. A blog is information. A blog is a story. A blog is value you can read. It can be a recipe. It can be a history of. It can be a detailed list of all the products you sell. But a vlog is you're getting to see into someone's life. The reason they became so incredibly popular is because influencers started vlogging their life. And it gave lonely people like me the ability to watch someone else's life who is also lonely. They're also alone. And it kind of connected this whole generation of people. And now it's really used to advertise your life and your product. When you're vlogging, you can say, hey, I start every morning drinking my own coffee. Or I spend every day sewing my decorative pillows. So it's really a way to show people into your world and make them feel like they know you, that you are a part of their life, that they are a part of yours. So doing a day in the life vlog, first of all, guys, points for style here. People want it to look good, but they don't want it to look too good. You clearly have to be filming it. You cannot hire a camera person. But you need good audio, you need good video, you need good lighting. So plan it out, put some time into it, write a script. Do not just try to wing it. Watch a couple online and get some ideas. Idea number 4, a giveaway contest. Guys, giveaway contests are huge. This is some of the biggest content marketing that you can do for your audience. And here's the thing. It is a great way to create user-generated content. Starbucks is so good at doing this. They basically will put out a contest that forces their audience to create content for them. They have to post it on their social media, and then Starbucks will decide if it's good enough to put on theirs, and then maybe you'll win. So they are so good at, hey, you go ahead and create this content for us so that you can win this prize, but meanwhile, we're going to maybe use your content if we think it's good enough, and we're going to take it for free. And here's the thing, you might be wondering, how do they get to pick if the content's good enough? Like, if they're just getting a whole bunch of posts and they're all really bad, then, slim pickings, and it was sort of a moot competition. It didn't really matter. Starbucks is so big, and every company that is doing these types of contests have the ability to reach such a wide audience that you are not just going to get 3 submissions and they're all going to be blurry photos. People are photographers now with their phones. People think they are artists, and maybe they are, but they are putting time, effort, and energy into these contests because they see it as valuable. So if you treat it as if it's valuable, then they're going to treat it as if it is too. Number 5, interactive photos. So this has been a pretty big trend lately, but it's definitely something that I've just been waiting to have happen because it's good. You know what? I'm a photographer. I'm not going to lie to you. It's good to see that photos are making a comeback, because for a while people were all video. But photos can be interactive too. And one of the best things I've been seeing is the click to do X. So if you're in your Instagram stories and you see a girl not wearing makeup and underneath it says click to do my makeup, and you hit click, the next photo she is in the exact same pose, but she is suddenly wearing makeup. Guys, that is so freaking cool. I think that is awesome when people do that. I think it is creative and engaging and interactive. But it takes time and effort. And if you are a brand who is wanting to do this, then I recommend taking that time and effort and finding an interactive photo strategy that works with your product. If, again, you're coffee, click to fill up the mug. Click to make a latte. Click to add whipped cream. Click to grind the beans. There are so many different things you can do, all of which people are going to have a ton of fun interacting with. And let's be honest, you are going to have a ton of fun creating. Okay, everyone, we are going to go ahead and take one more break. But when we come back, we are going to be talking about what the aftermath of all of this looks like. You've created your content. You're on a roll. What do you do next? So stay tuned for that, because you are listening to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and I'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and on today's episode of the podcast, we are talking about content marketing. And let me tell you something right now. If you are trying to brainstorm your content marketing, you're on step 2 that we talked about. You're on the brainstorming step. You've taken my ideas, but you're still a little stuck. Here's what I want you to do. 1, finish listening to this podcast. I have more things to say. But 2, go check out the GSMC Podcast Network. We have a podcast. This isn't me being dramatic. I tend to be dramatic, but this is not me being dramatic. We have a podcast about everything your little heart could desire. It's actually incredible how many podcasts we have. And now you might be asking, hey, how is that going to help me brainstorm? Just seeing the sheer amount of podcasts we have will get your brainstorming juices flowing. But if you take a minute and you listen to a podcast, and here's the thing, I almost guarantee whatever product you sell, we have a podcast about that. You sell makeup, we have a beauty podcast. You work in sports, we have a sports podcast. You sell footballs, again, sports podcast. We have a podcast on just about anything. And something I love to do when I am brainstorming is to listen to a podcast. It honestly gets your brain in the mood to create because you're hearing other people create content, and it gets you going, it gets you excited, it pumps you up. So go listen to some of those podcasts. But here's the thing I want you to do. It's a little selfish of me, but here's what I want you to do. Go find your podcast you want to listen to it, fall in love with it, but then come back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast and tell me what it was. Because guys, it's the coronavirus. I'm freaking bored and I could use a good podcast recommendation. Right now, I can recommend to you, I love our technology podcast. It is so good. It is definitely one of my favorites. I love listening to it. But sometimes a girl doesn't want to just listen to tech. So if you have any suggestions of GSMC podcasts that you really like other than the marketing one, then please suggest them to me because I am open and willing to take anyone's suggestions. All right, so let's quickly review everything we have talked about today. Because content marketing, guys, I want to be so completely transparent with you. It is going to take your marketing to another level. It is going to push your marketing strategies to the next level. You are going to get user-generated content for free. You are going to get your users engaging with your content more frequently. You are going to notice a boost in your sales because people are finding your content without finding your product first. And that is what content marketing is about. That, when you see that happening, that people stumbled upon your Instagram having never heard of your product before, but now they are part of the community, that is when you know you are doing a good job. That is the moment we are looking for here. So write that down right now. Take out your notebook, write it down. I'll take a sip of water. I'll wait. Because that is the most important thing when it comes to any marketing. We want to get you selling more product. That is the point of marketing. You can spend all day slaving over a video, creating a podcast. That could be an idea too. We talked about ideas previously, but create a podcast. If it is not getting people to sell your product, it's useless. It's no good. It's not helpful. So remember that when we talk about everything today, remember that is the goal here. We are trying to create content that will get you to the end game of selling more product. But all the stuff that happens in between is people engaging, interacting, and joining your community. So that is what we have been talking about today. So the first thing we talked about is how to start creating content marketing. So number one, you have to gather your data. You need to know what people like and what people don't like, what your audience likes and what your audience does not like. Number two, brainstorming. I've already talked so much about it, but guys, it truly is just so important. And it's not underrated, but it is definitely something that easily gets swept under the rug because you know how easy it is. You know how much fun it is. So you never feel like you're fully dedicated and doing it. Number three, mood boards. Take that brainstorming and put it to use. Number four, equipment check. Know what you have available. Number five, resource check. Know who you have available. Number six, create a game plan. Number seven, stick to your game plan. So you've done all those steps. It's Monday morning. You're about to go into your game plan. That's when we moved into segment 2 where I talked about ideas. Things that are probably on your game plan. These are things that you are going to start working on. You're going to start creating. So like DIY infographics, talking about how your product is made. Number 2, a history of blog. Writing blogs that actually give your customers and your audience genuine value. Number 3, a day in the life vlog. Showing your customers who you are outside of your product and why they should care. Number 4, giveaway contest. Guys, the easiest way to get user-generated content and to boost your engagement. And Also, we didn't even touch on this when we went over it, but it's a great way to get new customers, especially if you do a contest that is like, tag 5 of your friends. And then they tag 5 of their friends, and then those 5 friends tag 5 other friends, and so on and so on. And eventually you have like 100 new people on your page. And number 5, interactive photos, which is something I was so extremely jazzed about. And if you try it, please, you don't have to tag me in it, because I understand that maybe your company doesn't mesh with the GSMC marketing podcast and that might confuse your audience. But send it to me, because I'd love to see how you're making photos more interactive. I think we're in a new era where photos are going to be making a comeback, and I can't wait to see what we all start doing with them. I gave some examples previously, but I would love to see what you're doing. So now you've created your content. It is out in the world. Maybe it's succeeding, maybe it's not. What do you do? What is the next step? I have the next steps. Get ready. That's what we're talking about right now. So number 1 is data tracking. So I talked about if you didn't currently have a platform that was tracking your data for you during step 1, where we were gathering your data, you could just go onto Instagram and get it for free. That's great when you're starting this process and you just need to gather data. But tracking your data is a whole different ballgame. You need a system to track that data. And I did a whole podcast on different websites you can use. Some of them are free. But the most important thing here is every content marketing campaign you put into the world, you need to be tracking. You need to know how it's doing. And right now, I hope your pen and paper are still out. I'm going to give you some timelines of when you should be checking. Because here's the thing, checking it every hour, that's going to do nothing. Checking it once a year, that is also going to do nothing. So what you're going to do is you're going to check on it the next day. But then after that, you're not checking on it for 1 week. Then after that, you're going to check on it weekly for a month. And at the end of that month, if it is not performing where you want it to be performing, look over your data, figure out why, change it. Then start again, 1 day, once a week, until the end of the month. And at the end of 2 months, after you have pivoted, after you have made changes, if it still is not working, it's done. Put it away. It didn't work. Learn from it, but move on from it. Which brings us on to the second thing you do after you have released content, and that is to reuse content. So say you got the next day and already you're tracking it and it is through the roof. After a week, people are still loving it. After a month, people are still loving it. What are you going to do? Eventually that campaign needs to end. Do not just throw it away. Do not just put it in a drawer and pretend that it didn't happen. You need to reuse that content. And maybe you're not going to throw up the same post. Maybe you're not going to throw up the same video. But maybe you'll remember when Christmas comes around, the day in a life vlog that you did, and it did extremely well for your audience. So you are going to do another day in the life vlog, this time holiday edition. Reusing content is a great way to save money, save resources, and still get that level of engagement you got the first time. Number 3, guys, and it's so important, and it's something I don't want you to take for granted. Learn from your mistakes. If after 2 months the ad isn't working and you need to take it down, it is okay. The world is not going to fall apart. Your world is not going to fall apart because of this. Learn from your mistakes, take a second to mourn it, and then get up and get moving because you have more content to create. Okay, everyone, that is it for tonight's episode of the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and I will see you next time.
You've been listening to the GSMC Marketing News Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to any podcast app, and you'll find all of the shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, from business news to weird news, you'll find it all on the GSMC Podcast Network. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.